Welcome back to this episode of the Law of Relevancy podcast. Today, it is my pleasure to be joined by one of the most dynamic and active philanthropists and community leaders in all of Tampa Bay, Lyda Tymiak Lindell.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Cord. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I was really hoping I nailed the Ukrainian pronunciation.
You nailed it. We
good.
practiced a little. You nailed it.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, thank you again for joining us. We have, in our conversations that we've already had, I really enjoyed you are truly one of the most dynamic people. Your history, your background, what you've accomplished in your life. And I think it's something that other people should hear because, you started off as an immigrant to the United States around the age of 5.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit about how you matriculated here, how you got here, and what happened next.
Well, both my parents were born in Ukraine, Western Ukraine. And my father was born on a farm, little village outside of Lviv, which now is in the news. No one ever knew about it before. And he just was not a good farmer, and his mother decided that he should go to school in the big city. And he was a very good student, so he's a brilliant man. But so during the war, both of my parents escaped from Ukraine. They were actually studying in Austria when the war broke out. And they had near-death experiences. My father was imprisoned for a while.
And when we talk
by the
about
Soviets.
The war, we're talking about World War II.
World War II, correct, yeah. And they escaped. They were able to take my grandparents, my mother's parents, out with pretty much nothing. But their lives, and my father would always say, the one thing no one can ever take from you is your education. And so from when I was little, school was the most important thing. And my father was also a great philanthropist from the beginning. There were many Ukrainian displaced persons after the war, and he was brilliant. He knew Ukrainian, knew Polish, knew German. Well, didn't really know German, but he could go to Graz University if he learned German. He had 3 months to learn it, take his board exams, his entrance exams. He took the entrance exams, passed them, and 4 years later graduated number 1 in his class.
Oh my heavens. So you're learning an entire language in 3 months.
And that was mechanical engineering. Yeah.
Well, good thing that math, as we know it, is one language. But yeah, that is incredible.
Yeah. And then when he graduated, he got a job with a French company as a project engineer, and he was 25 years old. Went to Africa, built the dam for Tunis, and brought over 200 Ukrainian families to work on this dam. And so I was born in Tunis. My brother and I were born in Africa.
That's a big job to build an entire dam in your 20s.
Yes. I've looked it up online. It was a huge project, and it's the dam for Tunis.
Have mercy. That's incredible.
And so, the whole community, we spoke Ukrainian there and kept the culture going. And then he went to Bogota and built the dam for Bogota. So we moved there. And from Bogota, we immigrated by a cruise ship. We're doing okay, to New York, and moved to Brooklyn for a couple of years. And then we ultimately moved to New Jersey. My mother found a home in New Jersey, in Maplewood, New Jersey, which is where, I went to Ukrainian school, elementary school, and then the middle school there.
But this whole time, it's your family stressing to you the importance of an education, and you really took it to a new level.
Well, there wasn't an option in my home. You had to study, you had to do well. A B was not acceptable. I had a brother who's 3 years older. My brother got a perfect score in his SATs, English and math.
Wow.
And he went to Princeton, studied physics and computers at that time. He was ahead of his time. Yeah. But we just had to study. It was the important thing. And when I went to college, I went to BU, came home my first semester, I told my mother, I think I'm going to be a philosophy major. She went, in Ukrainian, what are you you doing? We stayed up all night. And
Yeah.
she said, you cannot do something where you can get a job and do philosophy on the side.
Right. Exactly. Let's talk about the theory of making money as a philosopher.
Right. Yeah. So I had to add on chemistry. I did summer school chemistry for pre-med. And
And so your brother was a physicist and you had to settle for becoming a physician surgeon.
Settle, yeah. I mean,
Just
my
kidding.
parents.
Yeah.
I really did like philosophy, Eastern philosophy, actually. But I did pre-med, and then that was the time when women were not really accepted much in medicine, and it was very hard to get into medical school. It was the Vietnam War, too, that era. And my guidance counselor said, you really should just forget it, try dentistry. And I said, but I don't want to do that. I want to be a doctor. And so I applied to a number of schools, and I got accepted to one. So I felt like I hit the lottery,
That's amazing. And so you've actually had multiple careers in your life, but your first career was 30 years as an eye surgeon.
Right. Yes. Well, in medical school, you go through a lot of rotations, and it's hard to decide what to do. I liked so many fields, but my top two were internal medicine and OBGYN at first.
Right.
And when I did my internal medicine rotations, I saw that what you do in internal medicine is just treat chronic problems. You treat something, you tune a person up, and then they come back with the same problem, but maybe worse, or add on more medications. And I just didn't think I wanted to do that my whole life. I wanted a little more instant gratification. So I thought OBGYN would be a great field. But then when I did my ophthalmology rotation, I just fell in love with the surgery. It's very elegant surgery. You deal in microns, microscopic surgery, and you get an immediate result. I mean, it's really amazing to give someone sight, a 10-minute procedure, and their life changes. So it was very gratifying to me, and I decided on ophthalmology, and then opened my own practice, which not many people did. Did the whole thing, and it was an experience. But my first day, I wasn't even open. I was still, doing the decorating in the office. I had 6 patients. So it was in an area that needed me.
That's incredible. It seems like you're accomplishing all these incredible things really ahead of your time, and did anybody ever tell you what kind of how much of a challenge it would be, or how did you approach some of those things in front of you with such optimism or such belief that you could just get it done?
Well, I know my parents always said that I should be a doctor or a lawyer, right, or an engineer. That was their thing, and just study and you can do it. I never thought that I couldn't do it, although when I first came to Tampa in the residency program, I think I was telling you, I was 8 months pregnant when I started my residency. And there were people that said I couldn't do it then. But I knew I could. And I had a baby my second month of residency. And I had my second child my last day of residency. So
that's amazing, because it's hard enough as it is.
Right. In retrospect, I don't think I'd recommend it for someone. But once you have to just do what you have to do. You take care of things. And, women need to have the babies. And when are you going to have babies? I wanted to have children while I was young.
And you got to do both.
I did both. That was the plan, each to the day. They were both timed. And actually, my daughter became an ophthalmologist.
Wow, you must be really proud.
That was, born during during the internship.
She was born an ophthalmologist, so to speak. Right. She was doing some studying during...
Yeah, right.
Yeah, in utero.
By osmosis. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Please read out loud, Mom. And so I love talking about that entrepreneurial spirit because in my opinion, there's a spark, there's something special about people who just have it in them. What do you think it is for you in terms of like, what gives you such a strong belief?
Well, after I graduated from ophthalmology, I knew I wanted to practice ophthalmology, and I almost joined a few practices. But the more I thought of it, I just knew from my personality, I like to give the orders. I like to be in charge and take on that responsibility. Like I'd say, life should be similar to the OR, where everyone just does what you tell them to do. Not like my kids, do their own things. So I like to have that control of my environment, what's happening, and that's really what I wanted, and I wanted to give it a shot.
For me personally, a lot of times I'll look at things, whether, it could be a brand new business to me, or it could be, just observing something, and I look at it and I'm like going like, wow, they're like, these people are getting it done. I should be able to get it done. I might not know. I mean, I'm definitely going to have blind spots and I'll definitely make some mistakes, but there's just something about whether it's courage or just dumb ignorance, whatever it is. But, there is something for me about trying something new that I think is exciting more than it is scary.
Right. And you can't be afraid. You're going to make mistakes.
Right.
Things aren't going to be perfect, but I know when you make a mistake, that's the time to learn. That's
100%.
when those are the times of greater growth.
Yeah. And it is that journey in itself, in a lot of ways, that is the reward.
Right. Oh, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And it's fun.
Yeah. And so like I said, you've done many, many things in your career. And so you have a completely full, successful career in eye surgery, and then you go on vacation and get hurt.
Well, I just want to add one thing before that, because I am kind of ADD. I had the eye surgery practice, which was general ophthalmology. Mostly I did cataract surgery. But then I was very interested in plastic surgery. So I opened up a med spa, and I did a lot of lid surgery, upper lower lids. I did laser surgery, facial resurfacing. I was on the Allergan National Education Board before Botox was, before Botox came out.
Really?
So I was very much into that plastics and cosmetics. I even had body shaping in the spa.
Lid surgery, that's ptosis?
No, well, that's one of them, but baggy lids, puffy lids, under the eyelids, the fat pads. I had a special technique that I actually taught, and it was all done with a laser without an external excision, baggy lids. So that's caused by fat underneath, and I can remove the fat without touching the skin and then lasering the skin to tighten it.
That's
just
amazing.
A really elegant procedure.
That's one of the things I'm actually a little self-conscious about. Like my mom got eye surgery back in her 40s, a long time ago. And I was like, Mom, why'd you get eye surgery? I never, as a little kid, ever thought about it. But I have the same genetics she does. And so as I get older and I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm like, one of my lids is a little bit lower. And then it's it looks like I'm always tired. And so, but that's incredible. So you try things, but you don't just do them. You try to figure out, how can I be the best in the world at it?
Yeah, I was teaching in conferences, like going to Canada and the academy conferences, and I was teaching cataract surgery and the lid surgery. Yeah. And really, very excited about everything at kind of the height of my career at that time.
Yeah.
And I had a hobby. So my big hobby was windsurfing. And I would go to Aruba or Maui or Hood River, where the months that the wind was the best, and windsurf. And these are kind of, they're places where they're heavy duty wind,
Right.
But I like that. So, and then I built a home on the Gulf. I had 12 sails, 6 windsurfers. I could windsurf off my house.
Amazing.
Sometimes I'd even go over lunch work in the morning. And, so I really loved that sport. And I decided, well, we went to Aruba one year, and it was June, best winds, and they have this high wind Aruba Classic race. And I just thought I was doing so well, why not race? And the day before the race, I went to sign up. I ran into a local. His name was Pappy. And I said, I'm not sure if I should do this. He goes, of course you should. I do it every year, and I always learn something from it. Okay, I'm doing it. Day of the race, I go there. They don't have the right board. They don't have a life jacket for me. They don't have the right sail. It was like just nothing was flowing, but I did it anyway. Did the race, did one heat, it's fine. Second one, they put men and women together, and they had a figure 8 out into the Caribbean. And
so people were going to be crossing.
Right. And so just the way things happened, there were 7 men coming at me at the crossing, and I fell and got up and was going again. And I collided with the fastest one that was winning. And so we're in the water. Everything's broken, literally. The boards, the masts. I had a harness on. The harness was tore off of me. And the other guy was in the water. And he goes, Lyda, was that Pappy? It was Pappy that I met the day before that was in the water. And he had some pain in his chest. So they fished us out, put us on ice on the shore, and I couldn't walk. It's funny, you can't be your own doctor, right? I thought it was just a soft tissue injury. They had the Dutch Marines there that helped us, but turns out that I had 3 pelvic fractures from that. And that was pretty much life-changing as far as my practice. And I was solo. Very busy practice. I had a ton of surgery booked the week I came back. And it takes a while to heal from a pelvic fractures, plural. And I didn't need surgery. They were non-displaced, but still, just tough. I actually went back and saw patients in one room, just sitting there, saw 60 patients the first day back.
With pelvic fractures.
Yeah, before I knew. Because I was in denial.
It could have just been the Ukrainian in you, just the tough lady.
And then I went to the orthopedic surgeon, who was a friend of mine. He took an x-ray, saw the MRI. He goes, what have you done? I don't even know what to do with you. Just go to the trauma specialist in St. Pete.
Yeah.
And so, I had 2 months of pain. I had a wheelchair, that's another thing, to go through the experience of needing a wheelchair.
That's got to be psychologically impactful as well, I would imagine.
I never thought about it being from that point of view. I took a trip with the wheelchair. I went to a conference. But just the way people treat you, it made me just so much more sensitive to those that have disabilities. It was really amazing. Remember once home health care came because I needed a wheelchair in the house, and I had crutches. It was just tough. And they brought me a wheelchair to my bedroom and left. Well, it turns out it was too big to get out of the door. So I had to call them back to get a chair. But just the little things like that you don't think of that are...
But you were really learning the medical system from the point of view as a patient.
Well, yeah, I had to see a number of doctors because I just wasn't healing well and wasn't feeling... It was a big stress to my system, and I was just getting very fatigued and a lot of symptoms. And all the doctors I went to basically said, I can't do anything for you. And that just wasn't good enough for me. So with some research, I decided to go to Las Vegas to the Synergenics Institute, which was very much ahead of its time as far as longevity medicine.
Is that what Synergenics means?
Synergenics is what it means. It's just being in control of your future and your body. And so I I did a whole hormonal panel, metabolite panel, and with that, I started coming back to myself. But that was not offered by anyone that I saw in medicine, that was available in Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
So because it helped me so much, I added that to my practice. So that was part of the spa. I did Synergenics and saw patients for that. So I just embrace all these new
So you
things.
went through this experience of Synergenics and learning about how to be proactive in your health care.
How to balance your body, balance your hormones.
You had to go halfway across the country to even find a place that could offer this to you.
Yes.
And so,
Well,
again,
that was 2005 when I did that.
but you're learning that there's this need for this type of medicine.
Exactly. And because it helped me so much, I opened that part of my practice up and added those patients.
And so tell us about, because this is in part, like what you're doing today.
That was the beginning. What I'm doing today is an add-on to that, an evolution.
Sure.
Because I practiced ophthalmology for 30 years, and I sold the practice, and it's still thriving now in Palm Harbor. But 30 years was enough for me. And I met the most wonderful man and got married, moved to Tampa, and I tried to commute 20 miles, but it was too much. And we're very active in Tampa, and we travel a lot. And it was time. I was ready for something different, even though as much as I love medicine. I always kept my degree and my license and all the training.
Of course.
But after I moved to Tampa, I started getting some very strange symptoms, such as just waking up and feeling achy, like the Tin Man, congestion. I'd play golf or tennis, and I'd get numbness in my feet, just headaches, just strange things I had never had before. And I would see the ENT. Oh, you've got a little sinus issue. Here's some decongestant. I saw a GI specialist. Oh, you need a biopsy, and oh, you're fine. And I must have seen 7 specialists. And it was basically, it came down to, I had a little sinusitis and age. And I just wouldn't buy it. It didn't make sense to me. And that's when I really pivoted, and I got a fellowship in functional medicine from the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine.
Really?
And so that took a couple of years, and I started meeting really high-power doctors in this field who all had a similar story, either themselves or a family member that couldn't get better, got very sick one way or another, very similar symptoms sometimes, or chronic illnesses such as diabetes or heart disease or lupus. And there's always a medication for that. May not help too much, but in functional medicine, we look at the root cause.
Right.
Well, why do you have these symptoms? And ultimately, it's looking at the cell. What's going on in the cell, in your body, that's off?
It's very interesting how you mentioned in your career and in your life and your medical journey that you started off with internal medicine, and it was about treating the symptoms over and over again.
Yes.
And now you're moving on to years and years later with all of the experience and everything you have and your own personal experiences, and now you're looking at root causes.
Right. I'm circling all the way back to my primary interest. And the field that is available to me now wasn't then. But I always think about that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had
But you're a living, breathing example of how this is working. I mean, you have one of the sharpest minds of anybody I've ever met. And it's like if somebody were to just not speak to you or to see you, they might think, wow, what is this 60-year-old? No, but you're
Thank you, Cord.
And but it,
Thank you.
But you you have a little bit more seniority on that, but you don't look it, you don't act like it, you don't sound like it.
I don't feel it.
You seem like when I'm talking to you, I feel like I'm talking to somebody in their 30s.
I feel better now than when I was in my 30s because all I did then was study and sit, But it's interesting that one of the symptoms that I initially had when I moved to Tampa was just fogginess. Like I couldn't think clearly frequently. Headaches, the achiness, but fogginess, foggy brain. Yeah. And a lot of my patients experienced that too. And I found the root cause of my problem.
Really?
Yes. And so that, to me, it's something that I think I'd like to share with everyone.
Can you share specifically that?
Sure,
would you mind sharing,
sure.
what was causing your fogginess?
Well, in functional medicine or longevity medicine, there are labs that are done. Mm-hmm. And, of course, the very detailed symptoms, review of symptoms, the whole physical. But the labs are very unique. So they're micronutrient levels.
So these are like blood tests?
They're blood tests, urine and saliva. Mm-hmm. I do blood tests where you can actually see all the micronutrients, all the vitamins in your cells, in your serum and in the actual cell. So the serum number gives you the amount that's there now, like a vitamin D level in your serum. But if you look at the red blood cell or the white blood cell, that gives you an idea of what your body's been doing for the past 3 months, because that's how often you get the turnover of the cells. It was really interesting there. And also just the routine blood work, but lipid levels that are way more, like the advanced lipid profile, where you get particle number and oxidized LDL. That should be routine. And also toxin levels. I do a total toxic profile. So heavy metals, mycotoxins, plastics, parabens, pesticides. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of stuff in our environment over the years that we can accumulate. In my case, it was mold toxicity. And we actually found water damage in one of our buildings.
Really?
After I did all the testing and, pinpointed it, we started looking and found a lot of water damage, actually in 2 places.
It makes sense for the Tampa area to have mold because of our humidity and our heat. And when you're on the coast in Pinellas County, you get a lot of that salt air that mixed in, and it might help sanitize the air a little bit compared to like what we get over here. And it's basically a swamp.
It is. And also during construction, if drywall gets wet during construction, there's mold usually for the whole life.
Because it's covered in paper.
Yeah.
And that's what mold eats.
Mold loves it. Yeah, and no one had ever offered to test me for that. But the thing is that once I started detoxing, and that's not an easy thing to do because these toxins are so toxic that your body stores them in fat and in bone just to get them out of the way.
Oh my gosh.
So once you start detoxing, and there are herbs that can be used, there are different things that one can use.
I've heard things like sugar really complicate, they make it worse. And
well, sugar is food for mold.
Yeah.
But it's not, the mold isn't an infection. It is the toxin that the mold produces.
Gotcha.
They're very tiny molecules that they get past the blood-brain barrier, so they can cause brain symptoms. They can cause heart disease. They can oxidize LDL and cause plaque formation. Yeah. They affect the microbiome in the gut and allergic changes. Of course, the sinuses and sinus issues. But just
that makes a lot of sense.
It's very
parasitic in the way that it interacts with you.
And now we're finding that it's not just mold, but there's mold and a bacteria called actinomyces. Mm-hmm. So and that's even more toxic than the mold, but they come together. They live together. So that's totally bypassed like in every exam that I've ever had.
I've never even heard of these
You've
things
never
you're
heard of
talking
it?
about.
And I find that, I'll tell you, 9 out of 10 of my patients have high mold levels. And we break them down so we can see 40 different types of mold species. Those very exact, and you get a readout.
And so now in your medical practice, you're really not seeing many patients. You're really focused on like this thought leadership and this awareness building
That's
around
correct.
this part of medicine, correct?
That's correct. I was a facilitator at a leadership conference about 6 years ago. We belonged to this organization called SIBF, Society of International Business Fellows. My husband he's introduced me to so many wonderful organizations, but this one is really incredible. They're all over the world, Kazakhstan, Europe, but they have these leadership academies where it's like an initiation into the organization and also a deep dive into your own psychology. And I had never been a facilitator before, so in a way, I was a facilitator, but I went through it myself. It was 2 weeks.
Sure.
And so one of the days...
That is very much your style, to be the leader in trying it for the first time.
Well, yeah, I'm always learning.
At the same time.
Yeah.
I'm picking up a pattern here.
Yeah, I guess so. But one day we all wrote out our mission in life. And I'd be writing, but it came down to very concise. My mission was to reduce chronic disease in the world.
Yeah.
And I have a practice where I see patients, but I'd like to have more impact and reach more people. Because, the statistics in this country for chronic disease are sad. They're staggering, really. We have 60% obesity. We are the unhealthiest civilized nation in the world. We have the most chronic disease, the most heart attacks, the most neonatal and maternal mortality, the lowest life expectancy. It's hard to believe. And yet we spend twice as much as other countries on healthcare.
Right. Well, if I was a pharmaceutical company right now hearing you say that, I would be scared because Lyda would be coming after me. And I don't want to, you seem to win at everything. But there is this theme of like this direct impact that it's like your energy goes right to making a difference, and I'm just reminded of it with the pin that you have on your lapel there. It's not just in the field of medicine, but even in the last, 2-3 years, you've had an incredible impact on the war that's happening over there in Ukraine through your Ukrainian Crisis Relief Fund.
Well, I'm a doer. I don't like to.
That's a good way to say it. You're a doer. Yeah.
And when the war broke out and Ukraine was invaded, and I saw those horrible pictures, and there's just enough crying I can do. I had family there. I would we'd do Zoom calls, FaceTime with the family, and I'd hear bombs in the background. And I decided I just have to do something to help. And I started the Ukraine Crisis Relief Fund at the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay, where I was a board member, been for 6 years. And so this is a way where people could donate. It would be tax deductible immediately to them, and the money would be used for humanitarian aid in Ukraine on the front lines.
And that's a big I think that's important to hit on the humanitarian aid portion of like the work that you do, because there's a contrast between the most of the news that we hear about supporting Ukraine or whatever, and a lot of that goes towards military assets or things like that. But the work that you're doing, it's like you were saying, like you're a doer. It's like that money goes directly towards things that help families and people that are suffering in that environment.
Absolutely. I am in touch with people in Ukraine. I work with TAPS, an organization that's just wonderful in Dnipro, started by Bonnie Carroll, who has helped people all over the world through TAPS. She got the Medal of Freedom, actually.
Wow.
But we text every day. They'll tell me what they need, and I try to fund it. So after the Kadovka Dam collapsed,
Right.
one of the grants went to a water truck. 8,000 people for a month had water with this truck. And I got a video of the truck and people getting water.
Right.
And then they said they needed ATVs. So 10 ATVs were sent over, very cheaply procured in Poland and brought over. And I'll get a video when it's being used to evacuate people, if someone is injured. And the latest has been 5 ambulances last week, actually, were delivered to the Donetsk region.
Yeah.
It's had a lot of fighting. So I've just developed contacts with the Army. I know a number of the generals now through some of the organizations. YPO, I went to Washington to the Democracy Summit in Washington. I went to the YPO Summit in England. So I know the ambassadors from Ukraine to the UK and to the United States. We speak Ukrainian. And so I have these contacts where I really know what the needs are. And I also know that when I do a grant, it goes to where it's needed and it gets there. And I have videos to prove it as well.
Right.
They thank me. In Ukraine, they'll thank me. Dr. Lyda Tymiak Lindell, they're so sweet. These families that were freezing this winter would get a portable generator, and that was reusable. So we did 40 of those.
That's unbelievable. And then it must be very fulfilling to actually see these assets, because they're assets that you're putting in place, to see them actually be used to do things like heat people's homes, to provide electricity for things like cooking, transportation in places like ATVs are very, famously
when
nimble.
There's no road.
Exactly. They can go off road, right? They can drive through the mud, and all sorts of things. And just, I admire you with the work that you're doing. And I think it's incredible. How do people support the fund and the efforts that you're taking part in? Because it's very, like I said, it's very polarizing for whatever reason with some of the military things or whatever. But if there's little kids that need to get to school, if there are, families freezing, they don't have the option to leave this gray zone where this war is taking place, right?
And they love their home and they don't want to leave.
They don't want to leave, right? But it's that's something that I think a lot of people can get behind, is that kind of work, right? Regardless.
Yes. I've had a lot of support. I've raised $700,000 so far.
That's amazing.
I'm hoping to get to $1 million. And I'm actually thinking of ways to get more awareness out there of what can be done, what needs to be done. And this is a way that really works. Totally works. I think we can all get behind what you're doing. Thank you.
So then you've got this going on. You have your medical practice. You've got your thought leadership. What's next for you?
I want to do podcasts. You've inspired me.
How's that? Do you feel like it's going?
Well, I like to talk about this, and my husband is tired of hearing.
There you go.
But there's so much knowledge that can help people change their lives. And most chronic disease is 90% preventable. 90%.
That's a little infuriating to hear. As somebody who might have chronic disease one day, or I always have congestion issues. So maybe I have something that I need to look at.
Well, we're all kind of a product of our genetics, which is only really about 20%. But that combined with what we call our exposome, everything your body has been exposed to till now, whether it's even bad thoughts or trauma, that can change your genes epigenetically. What you breathe, what you drink, chemicals, off-gassing of carpets, mold. There's so many things. So, but when one can get to the root cause, if you do the right testing, you know where to look for, including genetic testing. It can be very helpful.
It gives me a lot of confidence, because with with actual testing, I mean, there's a lot of things people can postulate about and guess about.
Right.
And
You
it's
don't
in
guess.
theory,
I don't
right?
guess.
Right. But if we do a blood test and we see that these numbers are out of alignment or out of control or not where they need to be, or something interesting shows up that's, you can actually do something about it.
Right. And then if you have a high mercury level, high plastics level, or parabens, and you're using a shampoo and cream that has a lot of parabens, you can make a quick change. If you're drinking coffee out of plastic and your plastics are high, just change it.
I know.
I was a big I am a tennis player. I love tennis on a team. And I was drinking water all the time out of styrofoam cups in the sun, in the summer. Right? Our club had styrofoam cups. Well, when I first got tested, my styrofoam levels were sky high in the red zone.
Really?
Yes. So I just bring my own bottle.
There you go.
Yeah. So many things, but you have to know, because genetically we all have genetic weaknesses.
Well, I know that you're not seeing a lot of patients, but where does someone find a physician that can help them with maybe taking a look at some of this?
Well, a functional medicine practitioner.
That's what you look for?
Functional medicine, integrative medicine. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
And I still do see patients.
Okay.
I like to help people.
Yeah, or maybe you could refer people where they could go get some help.
Absolutely.
So where can people follow you? Where can people keep track of what you're doing? Maybe they want to support some of the stuff you're working on, or just learn from you.
Well, I have a website. It's called UrBestNow, spelled UrBestNow.
The letter U.
The letter U, right? And I have the Ukraine Crisis Relief Fund. There's a link there.
Okay.
I am trying to do social media better to create more awareness of that. I have videos from Ukraine, so many that I want to put together and have it available, so I can send it out more, or people can see it.
We'll definitely link it in the description of the podcast that we're doing here now as well.
That would be great. So I'm learning that way. But I definitely am, right now is a critical time for Ukraine, for the people of Ukraine to continue to be strong, because morale went down with our country not giving the aid that was promised. And they're very entrepreneurial people. And actually, if you look at business, the economy, it's actually gone up this year. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of technology in Ukraine. A lot of tech companies outsource to Ukraine. So it's actually doing pretty well.
I know there's a lot of software development. Even our proposal software that we use at Bake More Pies has a little Ukrainian flag in it.
Oh, really?
Because a lot of their software developers live there.
Yes, yeah. They're very into that. They're very good at it. And, I think it will be rebuilt, but the economy is actually
That's very
still
encouraging.
Good.
Yeah. So we will definitely follow you there in those places. And again, thank you for joining us.
It was my pleasure. Really enjoyed it. My first podcast.
You're welcome. We'd love to be a part of that. And you can follow us anywhere where podcasts are found, on all the Bake More Pies social media, and of course the Law of Relevancy social media. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.